This ends now, Marla. You've played this family for the last time. I've seen the accounts, and your little game is over." The words hung in the air, sharp as daggers, and the atmosphere shifted from tense family gathering to battlefield. Marla's eyes widened briefly in surprise before narrowing to slits. "How dare you accuse me? After everything I've done for this family?" Her saccharine tone dripped with venom. I stepped forward, slamming the financial records on the table with a thud. "The numbers don't lie. You've been embezzling funds for years right under Dad's nose." Marla's perfectly painted lips twisted in a sneer. "Your father gave me full access long ago. He trusts my judgment, unlike his ungrateful children always questioning me." "Because you've poisoned his mind against us." Kira's outburst shattered the seething calm. "We're onto your games now." Marla rounded on her, eyes blazing. "You insolent little—" "Enough!" I roared, placing myself between the venomous woman and my sister. "You're outnumbered and outmaneuvered this time, Marla. It's over." Her features contorted in fury as she raked us both with her glare. "You arrogant fools have no idea who you're dealing with." Kira jutted her chin out defiantly. "We know exactly who you are, a con artist who wormed her way into our lives to bleed us dry." "Mark my words," Marla seethed. "You will regret this? I'll burn this whole diseased family tree to the ground before I'm done with you both." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The deafening silence that followed felt more like the aftermath of a bomb blast than a verbal confrontation. I let out the breath I'd been holding, my heart still jackhammering. Kira's trembling hand found mine, and I gave it a squeeze. Her brave face crumpled, eyes glistening. Did we just make the biggest mistake of our lives, Bryce?" I hesitated, tamping down my own doubts. Marla's parting threat still rang in my ears with chilling resonance. "I don't know, sis, but there's no going back now." Her expression hardened with grim determination. "Then we go all in, for Dad, for our family." I nodded soberly, catching a glimpse of the embattled path stretching before us. The war had only just begun. "Remember that time Dad took us camping by the lake?" Kira's voice was wistful, her eyes distant. "And we stayed up late telling scary stories by the fire." I smiled at the memory, a rare moment of peace and family togetherness. "Yeah, I can still hear his booming laugh when you jumped at every little sound in the woods." Her expression clouded over. Things were so simple back then, before Marla. I spat out the name like venom. Kira nodded slowly. "At first, I actually liked her, you know. She was fun, bought me little gifts, played the doting stepmom role perfectly, while systematically driving a wedge between us and Dad. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. She isolated him, filled his head with doubts about us." "Because she was terrified he'd see through her act," Kira said quietly. "That's why she turned him against his own flesh and blood. We were threats to her con." I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. If I'd seen it sooner, called out her manipulation. "Don't do that to yourself, Bryce." Her hand covered mine, startlingly cold. "She had Dad completely snowed from the beginning." Jaw clenched, I shook my head. "Not completely. Those first few years, I could tell he still loved us, still wanted us in his life." Kira's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "But she just kept chipping away, feeding him lie after lie until we became the enemy in his eyes." The memories flooded back, the bitter holiday visits, the strained phone calls dissolving into arguments, Dad always taking Marla's side. I closed my eyes against the onslaught. And we foolishly kept coming back for more, letting her twist that knife deeper every time. We were just kids, scared of losing our dad completely. Marla knew that weakness and exploited it to her advantage. Kira's voice dripped with self-disgust. "The sad part is, it worked for years. She drove this family apart piece by piece." I opened my eyes, staring at the woman she'd become, strong, determined, worlds apart from the broken little girl Marla had once reduced her to. Reaching across, I gripped her shoulder tightly. "Not anymore, sis. That narcissistic leech has shown her true colors now." Kira's lips curved in a deadly smile, mirroring my own. "Then it's time to make her pay for every sin." I should have seen the signs sooner. The lavish spending, the unexplained absences, the sudden mood swings. But Marla was an expert manipulator, deflecting my concerns with her signature innocent charm. "Don't be ridiculous, Kira," she chided when I confronted her about the new luxury sedan. The company's been very successful lately. Your father wanted to treat his hard-working wife. Lies dripped from her ruby-painted lips as easily as venom from a snake's fangs. Yet part of me still desperately wanted to trust her, to cling to the illusion of our happy family. That all changed the night I followed her to that seedy downtown bar. Peering through the grimy windows, I watched in sickened disbelief as she draped herself over some thuggish-looking stranger, hands roaming intimately. The way he gripped her hip left no doubt. This was no chance encounter. White-hot rage lanced through me. How dare this snake violate the sanctity of our home, betray the love of the man who'd welcomed her into our lives? Trembling with fury, I stormed into the bar, too enraged for discretion. Marla's head whipped around, eyes widening in shock as I grabbed her arm in a vice grip and yanked her away. "What the hell is wrong with you?" She hissed, angry crimson splotches marring her cheeks. I shoved her hard, reveling in the fear flickering in her eyes as she stumbled. "I could ask you the same thing, you wretched whore." Her face contorted in an ugly sneer. How precious! The little daughter still thinks she has a higher moral ground to stand on. "You make me sick," I spat, revolted anew by the reek of alcohol and cheap perfume wafting from her in thick waves. "You're nothing but a poisonous snake, slithering into our family to spread your venom." Marla threw back her head and cackled, high and mocking. Only now the sweet, naive child opens her eyes? Did you really think your pathetic, spineless father could resist me forever? A rumbling growl from behind me made my blood freeze. "I wouldn't be so sure about that, sweetheart." Bryce's low, deadly voice was like a bucket of ice water, jolting reality into harsh focus. Too late, I saw the menace radiating from the hulking stranger lurching to his feet, rolling up his sleeves as he closed in. "Well now," he leered at me with yellowed teeth. "Looks like we've got ourselves a hot little audience tonight." The shrill ring of the hospital phone sliced through the tense silence like a blade. A gloved hand gestured for me to answer. My mouth was dry as ash. "Hello? Bryce? Oh, thank God." Kira's quavering voice cracked with relief. "I didn't know who else to call. It's Dad." Those two words detonated like an explosive in my chest. I clutched the receiver with white knuckles. "What happened? Is he still alive?" she rushed to assure me, voice shaking. "But barely. They said it was a massive heart attack." My knees threatened to buckle under the weight of those words. Our strong, vibrant father hovering at death's door. Flashes of cherished memories flickered through my mind, his booming laughter, warm embraces, twinkling eyes. So many moments he should have had left to live. "I'm on my way." The words tumbled out in a croak. "Please hurry," Kira whispered brokenly. "They don't know if—" She cut off abruptly, dissolving into muffled sobs. I found her in the sterile waiting room, huddled in a chair and radiating despair like heat from a furnace. She lifted reddened eyes at my approach, lips trembling. "The doctor said his odds of pulling through are slim. Oh God, Bryce, I can't lose him like this." Sinking into the chair beside her, I pulled my baby sister into my arms. She clutched me with frantic tightness, fragile frame shuddering against mine. For a long while we clung together as her anguished sobs racked us both. What if the last thing he remembers is the horrible things Marla turned him against us? Kira finally choked out. That she made him believe we hated him? "We'll find a way to remind him, sis." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "One way or another, he'll know how much we loved him." She gripped the lapels of my jacket with white knuckles, staring up at me with desperate pleading. "How?" "You heard the doctors. If he doesn't regain consciousness soon—" A sudden torrent of icy water doused my veins as the horrible realization dawned. My mouth set in a grim line. "Then we make damn sure Marla doesn't get a cent of the legacy she tried to take from us all along." Realization flickered across Kira's face, the last gift we could give our dying father. Squaring her jaw, she gave a solemn nod, her eyes glinting with a flinty resolve. "Whatever it takes." The reading of Dad's will should have been a somber, dignified affair. Instead, it erupted into a battlefield of epic proportions. "This has to be a mistake." I slammed the document down with a resonant thud. "There's no way in hell Dad would leave everything to that viper." Marla lounged back in her chair, perfectly at ease as she examined her blood-red manicure. "I'm afraid those are his clearly stated wishes, darling. You're simply going to have to accept that your beloved father chose me as his sole beneficiary. Her saccharine smugness was like an ice pick stabbing through my guts. Kira shot to her feet, face crimson with fury. You manipulative snake, we know you wormed your way into his life through lies and deceit. Marla arched one sculpted eyebrow. Such harsh words from the ungrateful daughter. I'm his wife. His victim, you mean? I cut her off with a sweeping glare. This sham of a will is nothing more than a product of your twisted mind games. You arrogant fools. Marla's poised demeanor finally shattered with a contemptuous sneer. Did you really think I married into this family for love? Please, I set my sights higher than becoming a kept wife decades ago. The words struck like physical blows, shattering any lingering doubts about her motives. Kira's hands clenched and unclenched, entire body vibrating with rage. You, vile, disgusting snake. I'll see you rot in prison for this if it's the last thing I do. Marla threw back her head in a mocking peal of laughter. My dear girl, I'd like to see you try. Your petty tantrums mean nothing. I own this family's assets now, lock, stock, and barrel. Her eyes glittered with dark delight as she surveyed our stricken faces. But by all means, fight me if you insist. I'll bury you both in legal proceedings until you're destitute and forgotten husks. The attorney cleared his throat uncomfortably. I must advise against making threats of legal action, Miss Parsons. Oh, stuff it with the formalities, Marla snapped at him. She leaned across the table with a predatory smile. Face it, you pathetic wretches. I've won. This family's legacy is mine now, and I'll bleed it dry before you ever see a penny of it. She shoved away from the table with a harsh screech of wood on granite. Don't forget to let yourselves out when you're done with these childish hysterics. Kira was trembling violently from head to toe in the wake of Marla's exit. Tears spilled from her eyes, hot and furious. That absolute monster, her voice broke on a sob. After everything she's done, she still thinks she can take what's ours? Our birthright? I watched her crumble with a knot of dread tightening in my gut. My own anger felt like a living force, burning through my veins with scalding intensity. This wasn't just about Marla's betrayal anymore. It was about preserving Dad's legacy, his life's work, from being defiled and bled dry by her greed. Even more than that, I realized with grim resolve, it was a fight for our family's very soul. And by all that was sacred, I wouldn't let that vicious harpy emerge victorious from her own vile machinations, not if I had to burn this whole kingdom to the ground to stop her. Marla Stevens? More like Marla Stevenson, a.k.a. Mary Richardson, a.k.a. a dozen other aliases. Nikki slapped down the thick manila folder with a flourish. This woman's a grade-A con artist with a rap sheet as long as my arm. I pored over the documents with a rising sense of vindication, pieces finally clicking into place. Kira peered over my shoulder, lips parted in shock. So she really did worm her way into our family just to bleed us dry. Preying on lonely widowers is her M.O. Nikki's tone dripped disgust. She sniffs out rich guys desperate for arm candy, love bombs them into marriage, then cleans out their assets before tossing them aside like trash. My fists clenched until the knuckles turned white. The cold-hearted bitch. At least 3 of her previous husbands died under convenient circumstances, if you catch my drift. Nikki held up a grisly crime scene photo, making Kira wince. Girl doesn't leave loose ends once she's drained her marks dry. Ice trickled down my spine as the awful implication sank in. You think, is that why Dad's heart attack seemed so sudden? I'd bet my next paycheck Marla here had a hand in accelerating the process. Nikki's expression was grim. Wouldn't be her first trip to that thrill ride. Kira's hand flew to her mouth, revulsion and realization mingling on her ashen features. My God, she really is a murderous viper! My mind spun, with all the sordid revelations, fitting like horrific puzzle pieces. So that's her game, seduce wealthy men, drain their life's work for her own greed, then slither away scot-free when they're of no more use. Exactly. Real Bonnie and Clyde wannabe, this skank. Nikki slapped the folder shut with finality. I did some more digging. She's got a sleazeball boyfriend tucked away on the side doing all her dirty work. Blackmail, stolen identities, you name it. A muscle ticked in my jaw as fury simmered in my veins like acid. So when Dad's money ran dry, she sought a more permanent solution. And very nearly got away with it too, if not for you 2 stubborn kids muscling in. Nikki shook her head in grudging admiration. Takes diamonds to go up against a snake that crafty. Kira's eyes flashed adamant resolve. Then it's a good thing diamonds are forever. I gripped her shoulders fiercely, my voice granite hard. There's no way in hell we let that ruthless harpy slither away with another ill-gotten prize. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the winds of justice at our backs. Marla's criminal charade was unraveling, and we held all the cards to take her down for good. One way or another, I'd ensure this venomous viper never destroyed another innocent family again. Kira's steely gaze met mine in twin determination. So what's our play, bro? You know I'm ride or die on this. A feral grin slashed across my face as the perfect takedown plan crystallized. Simple, we kick it old school and bait the snake with her favorite lure. Money. Nikki caught on with an approving nod. I like the way you think, Slick. Let's bleed this witch dry for a change. The annual Palmer Foundation Gala was the perfect stage, an opulent charity event attended by the city's elite, and this year the disgraced Marla Parsons would take center stage for her greatest con's undoing. Well, if it isn't the prodigal children returning to the fold. Marla's crimson lips curled in a mocking smile as we approached. To what do I owe this pleasant surprise? I returned her plastic smile with equal insincerity. Can't a family gather for a prestigious event without accusations being flung? Spare me the phony niceties, Bryce. Her eyes glinted with predatory sharpness. We both know you two are up to something vengeful as usual. Kira leveled her with an icy stare. Believe it or not, vile snake, some battles are bigger than just us. Is that so? Marla laughed derisively. Do go on and elaborate, dear. I'm all ears for whatever deluded diatribe you've concocted this time. The ballroom had slowly taken notice, attention gravitating our way like iron filings to a magnet. I caught Nikki's signal from her prime vantage point, giving an infinitesimal nod. Game time. You want to know our issue, you parasitic leech. I injected raw venom into each word. Our problem is your entire soulless existence as a prolific con artist preying on the innocent. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I whipped out the incriminating folder, slamming it onto a nearby table with a resonant smack. Mary Richardson, Meredith Jasper, Marla Stevens, I could go on with your wretched list of false identities. Marla's face drained of color, blatant shock replacing her usual smug mask. You don't know what you're talking about. Save it, you heartless harpy. Kira's voice lashed out like a whip crack. We've got chapter and verse on your vile M.O., seducing lonely, wealthy men only to bankrupt them before they've even realized they're just your latest mark. Damning evidence splayed across the table in full view of the captivated audience. Crime scene photos, financial records, identity theft documents. The charade was imploding before their very eyes. And no, this is preposterous. Marla backpedaled, hands flying up in denial. These accusations are baseless lies and slander. I smirked without humor, having her dead to rights now. Funny, I don't think the families of your previous husbands would see it that way. The ones you decided to cut loose ends with permanently when they outgrew usefulness. Isn't that right? Mary? Pandemonium erupted in the ballroom as the reality sank in. Nikki appeared to slap steel cuffs around Marla's wrists as she dissolved into incoherent shrieks. Security swarmed in like bees after blatantly incriminating evidence was revealed. No, you arrogant fools, you've ruined everything. Everything was supposed to be mine. Kira looked down at the writhing, raging woman in utter contempt. We warned you this day would come if you kept slithering, Marla. Or should we call you by your latest stage name? I pulled free the final damning document. This sworn statement from your criminal accomplice details every lurid act of your con, right down to your hand in our own father's untimely demise. For the first time, naked fear flickered in Marla's eyes as the weight of her sins came crashing down in full public view. You're both a couple of dead children, she hissed through clenched teeth. Mark my words, this isn't over. Pivoting on her heel, Kira appraised the broken woman being dragged away in ignominious defeat. That's where you're wrong, Marla. This chapter is over, and the story of your miserable existence as a criminal has finally reached its inevitable ending. Her features settled into grim satisfaction as cops wrestled Marla out of the ballroom amid a frenzy of camera flashes and screams. But don't worry. They'll have plenty of time to tell it again as courtroom testimony against you. After so many bitter years, I felt nothing but bone-deep relief as karmic justice rained down upon that monster at last. The viper had finally struck itself fatally. The courthouse was packed to the rafters, a veritable media circus surrounding the high-profile case against Marla Parsons, revealed fraud artist and Black Widow extraordinaire. Kira and I had braced for the accusatory glares, the whispers of speculation about our own potential culpability. Instead, a surreal hush fell over the crowd as we entered. Then, one by one, people began to rise in a groundswell of respect. Family, friends, and business associates, community leaders, and patrons, all united in honoring our perseverance against unconscionable evil. Joe Marshall, Dad's former business partner and lifelong friend, limped forward on his cane. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Your father would have been so proud of you both, you know." I gripped his hand tightly, a lump forming in my throat. Kira huddled close beside me, steadying herself against the emotional onslaught. "We just did what we had to for Dad's legacy, for his honor." "No, son." Joe shook his grizzled head emphatically. "You stood up for justice itself against that monster's depravity. Not many could have withstood her manipulations like you did." His eyes dropped towards the front row bench where Marla sat, wrists and ankles shackled like the rabid beast she was. Her makeup was smeared, hair wild, the sweeping strokes of her signature elegant beauty. Nothing but a crazy queen's war paint now. Dad trusted her, loved her even. Kira's tone was laced with lingering disbelief. All this time, and we were too blind to see the truth until it was almost too late. Sometimes it's hardest to see a viper in the garden from the inside. Joe squeezed her shoulder with paternal gruffness. "But you kids persisted no matter how stacked against you, and for that this whole community owes you a debt." Tears stung my eyes at the reminder of all we'd endured, all we'd sacrificed to drive that final stake through Marla's machinations. Her eyes met mine across the courtroom, still burning with naked hatred. The eyes of a rabid beast denied her hard-won prey. No more. That path ended today, one way or another. The judge's gavel rang out, signaling the start of her sentencing trial. Marla stiffened like a snake rearing up, ready to strike her final venomous barbs. But this time we were steadied and strengthened by the swell of a united community, one that had seen the truth of her depravity with its own eyes. As the prosecuting lawyer stood to denounce her litany of unforgivable crimes, I caught Kira's gaze over the wooden railings separating us. Her eyes glinted with the same flinty determination as that fateful night all those months ago. This time, however, I saw no trace of fear or doubt, only the grounding reality of the road we'd traveled to reach this point. We were no longer two grief-stricken kids grappling with our world imploding. We were survivors who had wrestled our freedom and family's honor back from the dark clutches of a consummate predator. When the jury returned their verdict hours later, a sweeping condemnation condemning Marla Parsons to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, the roar of cheers and applause seemed to shake the very foundations of the courthouse. Yet all I could focus on was the look of sheer, disbelieving fury contorting that viper's features, her ultimate downfall realized before the very community she'd tried to ravage. As Marla was dragged away in shackled disgrace, I caught a glimpse of the old family portrait hanging in the lobby beyond the milling crowd. Dad's bright, proud smile captured forever beside Kira's sunny girlhood grin and my own brimming boyhood bravado. In that single defiant instant, I knew with soul-deep conviction Dad was looking down on us, redeeming the family legacy Marla tried so hard to defile. Our sacrifices hadn't been in vain. His light would go on shining through our relentless dedication to justice. And to each other, his children had reclaimed their birthright at long last.